Hi, David. This is Irene. Obviously, how are you today?
Obviously. Hi, Irene.
Good.
Thanks for inviting me here to drop in at your virtual studio.
Thank you so much. This is a pleasure because I've been following few of your posts and points of views that you're sharing in multiple media. And what caught my eye is some of the ideas which are your own. So all I had to do is just to invite you for this chat. And I do hope that what we're discussing, the points, maybe the whole discussion, maybe some points, will resonate with people out there. So
Okay, let's
good,
hope.
let's get going. Enough of just niceties. Let's get going.
Yeah.
So what we decided we're going to talk about is, yes, it will be digital transformation. The word I don't like personally very much anymore. It's everywhere.
Yeah.
But guess
What's
what?
up?
It's a lot of effort, right? A lot of work going on around it. And I loved how you propose to discuss trends around what's elusive and what's real here. So
Hmm.
it's a large umbrella. Take it away,
Well,
David.
I mean, you said something about these being my ideas. I mean, usually I'm working as a journalist. I'm synthesizing ideas from various places. So I've been writing for the Enterprisers Project, which is a publication sponsored by Red Hat, but it's a pretty straight ahead journalistic operation. My editor there was at CIO Magazine and InformationWeek previously. And honestly, digital transformation, yes, it is a buzzword. It's and it happens to be a buzzword that does particularly well in search engine optimization for their site. So they wanted somebody to write more on that topic. And I have had to work through too because I want what I write to be meaningful. Is what does it mean? What does it really count for? And and I've been asking that question to a lot of people. What does digital transformation mean to you?
Mhm.
I think it really is sort of people wrapping up their aspirations about what ought to be possible now that we have the cloud, now that we have artificial intelligence coming down for the ream of being extremely theoretical to being more practical for more organizations to take advantage of. And we have these generations of technology. A few years ago, I was writing for Information Week all about social business, and every darn thing that people wanted to accomplish in technology suddenly had the word social attached to it. There was social data reporting, which I guess meant that there was a comment field someplace where you could type something in. It And so we do go through these fads,
Mhm.
but I see it as being sort of the aspirations that CIOs, that business people have about the way things ought to be now. What things that were out of reach a few years ago, or required a huge budget to accomplish if you could get there at all, they see could be within reach, and they are starting to have these experiences on their phones and on their TVs. Smart experiences in their consumer life that they know they ought to be able to reproduce somehow in the business world.
Good.
So, so that's kind of a big picture take on what that really means.
I'll give you
Um,
that. This is a buzzword because guess what? There's a buzz around it, right?
right. And there's probably the extent to which people will attach. I'm a business transformation thought leader
Mhm.
to doing relatively mundane stuff
I know,
that
I
is not
know.
necessarily, very few organizations are really rewiring their whole business, remaking their whole industry. I mean, we've certainly seen it.
Mhm.
I think probably the biggest example of when an industry was completely remade was Blockbuster versus Netflix,
Yeah.
a few years ago, where uh, and the story goes that at some point they uh, Netflix went to Blockbuster looking for a partnership, and they said, "Go away, little pipsqueaks. We don't need to worry about you."
Yeah.
And then, a couple of years later, the business had gone away. Now, of course, since then, things have changed again and again. And Netflix is not necessarily, the king of the universe either. They're having to compete with other companies. So there are opportunities, though, to seize big opportunities like that for you. Opportunities to seize big opportunities. All right, I'm going in circles here, but
Good.
um,
We're in the same circle. That's good.
yeah,
Because,
yep.
definitely, right.
But most, if you can accomplish a significant change, a significant efficiency
Mm-hmm.
by sorting through the available technologies and rewiring a portion of your business,
Yeah.
that may be pretty transformational for your organization. So I guess just don't expect to rewrite the rules of the universe overnight. Um, that's definitely a lesson. And I was talking to you a little bit more about some of the MIT research that I've been following. Um, the people who wrote this book, Designed for Digital, which I like a lot, do a
Mm-hmm.
good job of articulating what is really going on, and the fact that big organizations still have a lot of advantages. They may have legacy holding them back, but some of that legacy is still making them a lot of money. And it's not so easy for upstarts to come in and disrupt a whole industry. And we talk about Uber in taxi service, but taxis weren't big multinational conglomerates generally. They were small private operators who didn't see that trend coming. If you're a multinational corporation, you can have a lot of startups nipping at your heels and still hold on to your position. You do need to think about those competitive threats, but if you're smart and you take things a step at a time, and you do allow some room for innovation without necessarily throwing out everything that's working for you. You don't want to do that. You can get just as much advantage out of digital transformation as the startups can.
That's an interesting point we're making here, because I would say it's not that startups that really threatening the well-being of big ones, right? It's rather the niche players who are
Mm.
definitely smaller organizations, much more agile, and they just focusing on this part of, let's say, technology spectrum, okay? They don't claim I have everything for your enterprise. And they
Mm-hmm.
win in these small kind of fronts. They win very often. So speaking of large ones, and I was part of the very large one for many, many years in my career. So I know how it feels from inside, where you want to innovate, you want to become next Uber, but guess what? You're not going to be an Uber, okay? You have your history of decades, of loyal customers. So I asked from my speakers to comment on legacy, the word that's less sexy than digital trends, but the word that all my practitioner friends, all my enterprise architect friends, executive, that they wake up in the morning because, hey, right, I'm not thinking how I'm transforming my company or my business today. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
they
Yep.
dealing with much more, what is much more important issues at the moment. So can you please give this guy a shout in a way that, yeah, digital transformation everywhere, and if you're not transforming digitally, you are left out. But where is this happy medium that you started talking about? Okay, my everyday loyal customers, my revenue, right? And the immediacy and an absolute need to transform and get the new way of working, get new way of serving your clients.
Right.
So where is that? Mm-hmm.
Oh, you want me to answer that?
I want you to answer that. I want you to bridge to this, yes, to those out there who really feel the pressures of, right, the pipeline growing, of customer being served, of customer experience, right, not overlooked. But at the same time, where do you start this kind of, intervention of new ideas and innovations in the business that may not be looking to transform.
I guess you look for what's practical for your
Mm-hmm.
organization. That, I guess that's really what it comes down to, is that, and that's that. I guess that's kind of the $1,000,000 question for any of these
Yeah,
organizations,
I'm going to
right?
grill you on this, David, because we said we'll talk about what's real, okay? Because what's elusive, I think we can picture with our imagination, but what's real, you think, or at least, right, your vast network of, yes, professionals out there doing every day. Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think every organization has to look at, what is practical for them to achieve, and they have to try some of the bigger things and figure out where to scale back. I'm thinking of a CIO at an industrial supply organization that I spoke with, who they had some relationship with IBM. They started working on, could Watson be our digital customer service representative? Could Watson answer more of the questions, or assist the sales representatives in answering more of the questions that they get on a daily basis? So, big idea, would have made a significant difference for their business if they had gotten it to work, and in the long run they may get it to work, but they went a certain distance down that path and realized that they had created an AI engine that could answer one little niche of questions, and there was a lot of territory that they were not able to address. It was just going to take too long to train the system to provide the kind of automation that they thought would be possible. So he said that he was going to go back to that. He's going to work on that again, probably in the future. But for now, they focused on more coming up with a good, knowledge base for the customer service representatives who still have to field those questions. So, great things are possible, but you really have to be careful about the idea that there are just these magical technologies that you're just going to plug them in, they're going to suck up all your data and analyze it without any human intervention or thought whatsoever.
Exactly.
Does not tend to happen that way.
Right? And something miraculous is going to happen just because you install the latest technology, right, in your organization.
Right.
I know
Yes.
exactly that, and we want that enthusiasm going, right? We do want this, what is aspirational trends going on, and people really like to talk about them, right? It just, again, other experts I'm speaking with, other leaders, analysts, they all agree that when you start very small, very manageable, you will be able to demonstrate your success fast, and not just to your clients and outside world, but inside your own organization, right? You need this kind of troops to support you. So it's not an easy journey, at least that's what I'm finding with my connection, my own experience as well. But at the same time, if we can leave our viewers with something to look forward here, so any tips that you found from your contacts, anything that's working for them?
Well, I guess in terms of the things that are not so earth-shaking, but very practical. I mean, robotic process automation stands out as something that a lot of organizations are making some progress with. And there are ideas too about how robotic process automation and AI will come together, and the bots will get smarter. But for now, it's really just modeling how people perform their jobs and training a bot to do that task on the people's behalf. And it tends to be, typically drudge work. So not necessarily terribly glamorous. We're not automating whole jobs, but we're automating the task of sucking
Yes, carrying
information out
out
of
the
one
same.
spreadsheet or one application and entering it into another. Things that make people crazy because they think those systems should talk to each other, but maybe there's not a convenient API. And so being able to work around those issues. I mean, it strikes me as kind of a kludge in a lot of ways. It's just sort of force fitting things to work together, but it works in enough circumstances that people are finding that it's productive to pursue. And there are issues about trying to make those bots more resilient, so that they don't break down the first time they encounter some data that wasn't anticipated in the design. And try and anticipate more things. Try and anticipate that the user interface, if you have a bot going in and essentially using the HTML forms-based user interface rather than going through an API, you can't have it breaking every time a button gets moved. So that that's a very, very
Yeah,
basic
that's a
issue
fantastic
there.
entry point. Absolutely. RPA is task automating, but you can move to a little more strategic process improvement initiative there. And you can, again, serve better
Yeah.
your customer, your employees, right? Absolutely. This is a very good entry point. Exactly.
Yeah, and it's just a, it, I guess as opposed to the business process management technologies that tend to be a little bit um, require a little bit more engineering and planning. RPA is something that is kind of the cheap and cheerful solution to some things.
Sure.
But
In the latest blog post, you actually mentioning another interesting point is that RPA jobs not just for technologists. Okay, what do you mean by that? Because many people still think, oh, I only wish I had those skills. These jobs are hot now. So who are other people who are not technologists, but they can take advantage of this whole way of automation?
yeah, I don't know. I mean, in some ways, the idea that it is something that anybody can do has been a little bit oversold.
Yeah.
Does
Yeah.
if you're going to actually be an RPA programmer,
Mm-hmm.
you need to definitely have some understanding of control flows and exception handling,
Mm-hmm.
so that you can overcome those little glitches, um, and hopefully in a more graceful way. But there definitely are folks who, as business people, have gotten involved just by realizing the potential and setting up an RPA program. They may not have their hands on the keyboard and be doing the development to the same extent, but just organizations where people have seen the potential of greater automation. They look at the inefficiencies and say, this is something that it sounds like this technology could use. If you can put yourself in the position of being that champion of the technology, um, maybe that's not a window that's going to remain open forever, but for organizations that haven't taken advantage of RPA yet, I think that is a career booster, career enhancer
Sure, sure.
opportunity
Yeah.
potentially. Yeah,
First person that comes to my mind is someone, a business analyst, someone between
sure.
technology, right, and business.
Hmm.
And if you and client kind of experiment, right, and get your result fast, but put some energy and intellectual ability into it, right?
Well, right. Yeah, and there's those people who really understand the processes well, who are the business analysts, and it probably depends on personalities and a lot of different things. Some of those folks may in fact be able to make the jump to being uh, RPA developers. If they want to be,
Exactly.
they may actually prefer being sort of more on the business side and serving that role of being the interface. You get too deep into the technology, sometimes you forget.
I
You
know.
forget those roots, even if you had them. So,
Yeah.
um, you definitely need those people to who can still speak English as well as write
Absolutely. And
code.
lines are
Yeah,
blurring. You know what? Yeah, I come from the world where IT department was completely separate. What, 20 years ago? You had one person you go in between, you know, from one group of people to another, and they
yeah.
go on different floors.
Well,
Okay.
I think you definitely need more people throughout every organization who at least understand the potential. Um, and probably that potential also includes having a good amount of skepticism for when those those magic solutions are proposed, to understand the gap between that and what they're really likely to accomplish. Um, so hopefully those are the people who read David Carr's columns in the Enterprisers
Mhm.
Project because they want to become smarter.
Exactly, because we'll become smarter just reading a few lines David Carr wrote, or we're lucky to
Yeah,
get
well,
on
eh,
chatting with David Carr.
it's a goal anyway.
It's the goal for all of us,
Yeah.
absolutely. We aspire to be, yes, in David Carr's universe, for sure.
Mm.
So speaking of this, David, yeah, this is fantastic. I know you spent part of your writing career around what collaboration and social business, which again, I totally understand because, I don't know, 10, 15 years ago in IBM, for instance, social platforms were taking off. We were so
Mhm.
happy using same time. That was the tool that was really robust for enterprise communication. We loved it.
Right.
We had what, 100 windows open at the same time. It was extremely productive for remote workers. So I cannot shut up how great it was. Okay. And I hear it's changing, right? Everything is changing right now. Slack is taking over pretty much all those platforms. So what do you think, like from social business to this digital business? Where are we in this?
Yeah, it's interesting. Alan Lipovsky, who's a very bright guy who's studied collaboration technologies for many years. He was an analyst. He's now at Salesforce,
Mm-hmm.
so he's sort of been swallowed up in the belly of another beast.
Yep.
Um, he would often talk about his years at Lotus and
Yep.
feeling like all these new web-based products were very cool and slick, and yet they couldn't do these things that he could do, a decade ago in Lotus Notes. And I was never a routine notes user, so I don't know how accurate his perceptions were. I mean, it wasn't as flexible, and somehow it didn't make the jump to the web-based generation of technologies. I mean, I really came into that area writing about social business and collaboration technologies for Internet World uh, and Information Week. Information Week, in particular, our publisher had an Enterprise 2.0 or E2 conference that they ran for a number of years. And at the time, the idea was that we would bring social networks inside our organization. So, IBM had connections, and there was Jive, and there was Yammer later. And it's interesting how that generation has faded into the background. I mean, Yammer's still out there. Jive got bought. I think IBM Connections doesn't necessarily get a lot of love anymore. Uh, it, Part of it was the idea of creating communities inside these organizations required actually a lot of management.
Mm-hmm.
You needed good community managers, and not that many organizations were willing to invest in that whole community building enterprise. And somehow I think the Slack and similar tools sort of snuck around that, and they found a way to just get us chatting. And it's really more ephemeral, but and I'm not sure that uh, Slack or Microsoft Teams or any of these tools are really as good for building um, sort of information assets within the organization. But it's something that took off. Although I don't know whether that has run up against its limits too, because people will complain about being on too many different Slack channels and not being able to keep track of it all. And it works partly because it works when it works, partly because you have kind of this compartmentalization of the organization. So instead of trying to build something that is going to allow everybody in the entire company to collaborate, you build something that allows a tight-knit team, to be more tight-knit, and to have this ongoing communication. So it works, but I think these things kind of there's a tension between them. I'm not sure. I don't think we found the perfect solution yet. We're probably not going to for a while. And I guess the other thing that I think is interesting is, I was always waiting for some standard to emerge that would allow social communication, social collaboration across different technology platforms, and that never happened. We've almost gone in the opposite direction, where you see specific applications will have a feed inside of them that you're supposed to use for that application specific purpose. So sales apps, we Chatter is the best known example, but there are others where they have their own collaboration mechanism. Instead of integrating with Slack or integrating with anything that you might think would be an industry standard, they found it worthwhile to create their own. And I don't know what that means exactly, other than that nobody can agree on anything. So at some point there did seem to be this idea that social was the most important thing, and that was going to rewire entire industries. And I think it has definitely come down to being an element that I think if you're building a digital business, you want to have good mechanisms for collaboration. But it's definitely one of many things that are significant. Mobile is just as significant. For example, you can have collaboration over mobile, but just the fact of having your computing experience in your pocket is definitely one of the things that has made a huge shift. And anything that is not a mobile first, mobile great experience. And I've been talking with some people about CRM, that CRM is still too much oriented towards the desktop form, and filling out all these desktop forms in order to feed information to managers. And a lot of salespeople don't spend that much time in front of a desktop or in front of a laptop. They spend that time on their phone. So if you can't make that a great mobile experience and a smart mobile experience, you're probably not really serving your people.
I remember the times when processes went mobile, okay, and that was huge in the way that you would be always tied to your desktop if you needed to complete the task and workflow, but it was a huge revolutionary change when you could do your process step anywhere on the go on the field, right? But now it's expected, what seems to be bored, right? Right now it's a reality that if you're not there, you're just behind, right?
Yeah, and this idea that having to enter data into a web form is terrible. A few years ago, the fact that you could get a web form, you could access this business form from anywhere, from home or on the road. Wow, that was a big deal.
It was huge.
Now it's awful. You want to make me sit in front of a computer and type? I want to be able to pull something out of my pocket and just talk to it.
Exactly.
Or touch it. Do something with a couple of touches. Don't make me type. So.
Absolutely, absolutely. You know, we moved away from the topic. I wanted to kind of to drill a little bit early on. So we talked about collaboration and we talked about organizations, and that's where I guess you have something very interesting, very different. I haven't heard from anyone else, because you expressed the idea of business units in the digital world, right? In the world of digital transformation, organized like set of APIs. Let's
Yeah.
think about it for a second. This is for me aha moment. Talk
Well,
to me.
yeah, I mean, I won't claim that the idea is entirely original. It really came out of reading Design for Digital, which I mentioned earlier, and interviewing Jeannie Ross at MIT, who I think is one of the people who best articulates what the potential of digital transformation really is.
We'll
And
reference
particularly, she talks about how it's not just an opportunity for these pipsqueak startups. It's for your big old company too. And your big old company probably has some advantages in terms of, yeah, they have a lot of legacy technology and that may be holding them back, but they also have a lot of legacy business, and
legacy
if they're
customer.
they are reasonably smart about understanding the digital challenges, but also the digital opportunities, they can stay ahead of the game, and they can fend off a lot of upstarts if they're smart. If they're smart, and there's certainly no guarantee that they're smart. But one of the things that they talk about in the book is the idea that you need to have a business design around software components, but also business components. And as I was reading the book, I kept saying, okay, what's a business component? And looking for where there was a definition of it. So when I talked with Dr. Voss, one of the things I asked, where are you trying to say that this should be like the way software integrates through APIs? And why do we have APIs? Why is that a significant thing in the software world? Well, it's because we want to break things down into manageable pieces. We talked for many years about getting away from monolithic systems. And there are also ideas in software architecture like encapsulation and compartmentalization and componentization. And really all what they mean is that we're trying to separate things out, and we're trying to avoid things being too rigid or too brittle. We're trying to make them as adaptable as possible. And if you want to achieve business transformation success, as Dr. Russ agreed, you probably do want to design your organization more like a set of software components that interact with APIs. And what we mean by that is that we do allow the business units that are trying to innovate some more autonomy. But we have a contract with them. We have expectations that we place on them. We expect them to interact with the rest of the organization through that API. And they do have a case study in the book that breaks it down in some detail in terms of how Spotify organizes itself, organizes its business teams, and organizes its software development teams. And they have some funky names for the teams on different levels. But really what it amounts to is the idea that you're responsible for this part of the software, this part of the business, and we expect you to honor your commitments, honor your APIs. When you're sent a request, we expect this kind of a request back. That's kind of what a software component does through an API. And that's what these business components need to do too. But within your scope of responsibility, you have some freedom to try and do things differently. And part of it comes from the idea that if you rely on every decision have to go up the chain of the organization and trickle its way back down, it just takes too long. We're trying, that this is part of the point, is we're trying to move faster. We want agile software teams, but not just agile software teams. We want an agile organization. And it's just, you know, maybe it's probably something that is expressed in the book, and I'm expressing it just in a geekier way by relating it to APIs. But for people who think about technology, it is a way of thinking about taking the things that have worked for you in the technology world, that have worked for you in software development and systems development, and how can we apply those values back to the organization so that we have an organization that is less brittle, more flexible, faster moving, more innovative.
Exactly, and that's why exactly what I loved about this concept, because there is less management pleasing initiative in what you're describing, because software component, either it works or it doesn't work, and signal does not go through many stages just because, you know, we're all human and we all want to look good. Okay, so there is some objectivity towards it. So it's a beautiful idea. It's wonderful. So I'll reference the book here, of course, in this talk, because people should know more and think about it and just see exactly, going back to the beginning of our conversation, what's real and what's elusive for every organization. So maybe many of them already working like that. I can definitely, see some excitement around this thinking. So thank you for sharing this. All right. So, David, as much as I'm enjoying being in presence of David Carr, this is a fantastic opportunity, especially looking at your background, the background of, the man is, beautiful.
Okay, well, yeah, you don't have to lay it on that thick, really, because I've enjoyed talking with you too, Irene. Thank you.
David, any takeaways, any couple of points that you kind of think will make a difference for audience out there? Digital transformation, are you in there? Are you starting? Are you very well progressing? Are you saying, no, that's not for me? I mean, any kind of takeaways you would find sharing here?
Yeah, you know, I wish I had a nice crisp answer to that. I mean, this is something that I am studying, I am researching, and I want to talk to more people. So as much as anything, I would like folks to get in touch with me through the Enterprisers Project, or you can look me up I'm at David F. Carr on Twitter. Get in touch. I mean, I'm looking to talk to more people about what they're doing, what they're attempting, what their questions are too. So you give me a question, I will pose that question to some people who are smarter than I am, and try and bring back some answers.
Beautiful. Fantastic. Yeah, I'll definitely leave your contacts here in this video. I'll definitely point to the great blog posts that you're writing, and they offer interesting ideas for sure, and people who you talk to also featured there. Absolutely, that's what this is all about, and it is a social collaboration, no matter how we are calling it now, right?
Yeah.
David,
we'll try to make one that works.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you so much for your time today. So this was a pleasure. Thank you. Yeah, talk to you soon.
All right. Bye-bye.